All right. Well, it is 1 o'clock, which means it's time for story time. And hopefully it's working. You'll have to forgive me. Facebook is throwing me for a loop with this new way of doing live videos. But hopefully you can all see me and hear me. And we're going to continue in our story because my live got cut off yesterday. It was a whole new learning experience as we're now trying to do preschool at home. And Lillian has class at 1 o'clock now. So we're trying to figure all of that out. And unfortunately, that meant that my video got cut off with Jonah stuck inside the belly of the whale, which is not really a place that we want to leave Jonah. And it's not really a place that we want to be either. Nobody's really excited about being stuck inside right now. We can all really relate to Jonah. So it was kind of funny and fitting, I suppose. So I'm going to pick up our story with Jonah, and then I will go ahead and read our story that is for today, the next one. And we'll just continue on with our stories from the Jesus Storybook Bible. If you don't have a copy of this, parents, this is a great way to introduce your kids to the theme of the whole Bible, which is that all of these stories are pointing us toward the coming of the Messiah and the good news, which we, of course, are celebrating this week as it is Holy Week. So it's fun to be going through these and to know that they're all pointing us back toward Jesus. And of course, we know that, well, if you've heard the story of Jonah, you know that he was in the belly for 3 days, which is where we're going to pick up our story. And he was in the belly of the fish for 3 days, just like Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. So I love that the way the story relates those two things together. So here we go. I'm going to start with Jonah, and unfortunately you can see he's inside the belly of the whale, and those are the whale's bones. So this is kind of not a fun place to be stuck. But we'll see what happens. Jonah must have thought he'd died. It was so dark in there, like in a tomb. But then he smelled the rotting food and felt the slimy seaweed and knew he wasn't dead. He was in the belly of the fish. Sitting there in the darkness for 3 whole days, Jonah had plenty of time to think. Pretty soon he realized his plan was, well, a very silly plan indeed. He was sorry for running away. He prayed to God from inside the great fish and asked God to forgive him. After 3 days, the fish spat Jonah safely out onto a sandy beach. Just then, Jonah heard someone calling his name. "Go to Nineveh," God said. And this time, Jonah said, yes. He went straight to Nineveh and told everyone God's wonderful message. Even though you've run far from God, he can't stop loving you, Jonah told them. Run to him so he can forgive you. The people of Nineveh listened to Jonah, and they started loving God. They learned to do what God said and to stop running away from him, just like Jonah. Many years later, God was going to send another messenger with the same wonderful message. Like Jonah, he would spend 3 days in utter darkness. But this messenger would be God's own son. He would be called the Word because he himself would be God's message. God's message translated into our own language. Everything God wanted to say to the whole world in a person. So that's the end of our story from yesterday that got cut off in the middle of Jonah. And I think it's so cool that it relates to what we're celebrating this week of Jesus spending those 3 dark days in the tomb. And now we're going to read another story that talks about God preparing his people for the coming of the Messiah. And actually, after this story, the next one is about the coming of Jesus. So I think it's fun that we're in all of these stories this week that are talking about the Messiah coming. And here we are celebrating what he has done. So this story is called Get Ready, and it's from Nehemiah chapters 8 through 10, Malachi chapters 1, 3, and 4, and Ezra chapter 7. Have you ever been to a party that lasted a whole week? How about a sermon that went on all day? Well, that's what happened to God's people after they came home from being slaves. They had forgotten how God wanted them to live or who they were supposed to be. So Ezra and Nehemiah read them the rules God had given Moses. But something odd happened. The more the sermon went on, the sadder they all got. Why? Was the sermon that boring? No, not really. It was strange, you see. As Ezra read the book of rules, it worked like a mirror. It showed them what they were like, and they didn't like what they saw. They saw that they had not been living the way they should. They saw that they were cruel and selfish. "We've blown it," they cried. "Now God will punish us." They thought they knew what God was going to do, but they didn't. Of course, they might have picked up a clue from Ezra's name, which means help is here, and an even stronger one from Nehemiah's name, because his name means God wipes away our tears. And that, as you'll see, is just exactly what God was getting ready to do. Ezra looked at God's children. Great hot tears were welling up in their eyes and streaming down their cheeks. He stopped his sermon mid-sentence and shut the book. "We're having a party," he shouted. And so that's just what they did, all week long. God wants us to be happy, Ezra said. All day they listened to stories about the wonderful things God had done for his people, how he made the world, how he gave a special promise to Abraham, how he rescued them from slavery, how he spoke to Moses and showed them how to live, how he brought them to a special land, how he rescued them, no matter what, time after time, over and over again, because of his never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. They remembered how God had always, all through the years, been loving his children, keeping his promise to Abraham, taking care of them, forgiving them, even when they disobeyed, even when they ran away from him, even when they thought they didn't need him. Then God told his children something more. "I can't stop loving you. You are my heart's treasure. But I lost you. Now I am coming back for you. I am like the sun that gently shines on you, chasing away darkness and fear and death. You'll be so happy. You'll be like little calves running free in an open field. I am going to send my messenger, the promised one, the one you have been waiting for, the rescuer. He is coming, so get ready." It had taken centuries for God's people to be ready, but now the time had almost come for the best part of God's plan. God himself was going to come, not to punish his people, but to rescue them. God was getting ready to wipe away every tear from every eye, and the true party was just about to begin. And friends, even though I know that this year that party feels a little bit different this Holy Week, the truth of the matter is that Easter isn't canceled. It's what we've been saying all along, that the truth of Easter, the beauty of Easter, is that Jesus defeated death. And while we're still experiencing death and the scary things that come with that in our world right now, Jesus has the ultimate victory. And we can put our faith and our hope and our trust in that, and we can celebrate. We can have a week-long party in our houses to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, this week that God's rescue plan that he put into motion at the beginning of time finds its culmination in this week. And that is something that is so worth celebrating. So even though we have to do it from a distance this year, I am very excited, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next couple of days with you through these wonderful avenues of social media. We hope that you'll be tuning into our Monday, Thursday live with Pastor Darren, into our Good Friday services, and especially to our Sunday morning Easter live streams. We are so excited to be able to share these things with you. And while we miss you and love you and can't wait to see you again in person, we're also celebrating our risen Lord with you. So I hope you have a wonderful Easter weekend, and you can tune in tomorrow. We're actually going to be reading the Christmas story of all things tomorrow, but it's all a part of God's wonderful story. So join me again at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and you'll hear even more about God's rescue plan. Goodbye for now.